Just hearing?
Yes, sir.
So let's call the meeting to order. And we have all the aldermen here. Alderwoman Lynch, Harris are remoting in. We'll go ahead and stand for the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go before the business of this city. We pray, Heavenly Father, that you will lead and direct our thoughts and our direction. We pray, Heavenly Father, whatever decision that we make, first be pleasing in our sight. Then, Lord, we thank you for the opportunity you have given each and every one of us. Continue, Lord, to bless our soldiers wherever they might be. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no.
Aye.
That motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve the docket of claims?
So move.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 6 is to approve the minutes from the regular Mayor and Board of Aldermen meeting on May 7th, 2024. Can I have a motion on that item?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And that motion passes. Item 7 is the consent agenda. Can I have a motion on that item?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And that motion passes. Okay, next is something kind of fun before we get started. Okay. Item 8 is to recognize Sharon, Wright, and Bob Barber. Are they here? Bob, come up. Is Sharon here? There's Sharon. So we don't have a proclamation or anything, but I will tell you that the City of Hernando is proud to have 2 Boston Marathoners from our city. And I'm going to embarrass y'all a bit. Bob Barber ran it in 3 hours and 39 minutes, and Sharon ran it in 3 hours and 46 minutes. And that is quite an accomplishment. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the Boston Marathon, but I used to say they didn't just let anybody in, but they did let Bob in. But we just wanted you to know we're proud of the way y'all represented us, and if y'all wouldn't mind, would y'all come up front and kind of take a picture with us? Yeah. We like to have pictures taken with great people. Nestor's going to take a photo.
Y'all got your best girl or something? What you got there, Bob?
Oh, what are those? Are those?
Well, we're going to do one with or one without.
Hey, if y'all want to put them on, put them on.
Let's do one with
Well,
them.
we'll do
All right,
one,
let's do,
yeah, and
okay.
the jacket is already ready.
That's very cool.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to y'all. Sharon, you can go, but since there's a lot of planning in this meeting, Bob, you have to suffer through it.
Can I say 30 seconds?
Absolutely,
30
I love it,
seconds.
yes.
Thank y'all for supporting the running group and the running community, the Water Tower 10K. I've been running for going on 5 years now. It's been transformative in my life. But thank you for supporting the running group, and whatever you can do to support our trail system, expand our sidewalks, make our streets safe for pedestrians, runners, cyclists, please do it. And thank you very much for doing so.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 9. That's to adopt the official resolution appointing me as the Mississippi Municipal League 2024 voting delegate and Alderman Miller as alternate for the City of Hernando when we go to the conference.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 10 is the approval to pay Gulf States Distributors invoice totaling $1,898 in the police department that did not make the claims deadline.
So move. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 11 is to hire the Gerald Group for the fiscal year 24 audit with the fee not to exceed $25,500 and authorize me to sign. And along with that, we are hoping at the next meeting, y'all will be approving the next audit that is almost finished. And this will just get us started immediately on the following one.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. In keeping with the process we started last year that we probably should have been doing all along, we have a proposed budget calendar, and I would like approval of this budget calendar for fiscal year 25 budgeting process. And I will say that the first one in May has been done. The departmental request forms have been sent out, and the department heads are starting to work on their budgets. So we just need an approval of the proposed budget calendar.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 13 is the approval of the budget amendment for the GOMDB special bond that was not previously budgeted and to publish that amendment. Can I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 14, Joe, would you like to come up and present the good news on this one?
Okay.
I'll read the motion. It's the approval of the best and lowest bid of $416,050.50 from Lehman Roberts for the asphalt paving project for 2024.
Okay. Last week, we received bids for the streets that are named on your list that we were advertising for. And we had 6 bidders. And as the mayor said, Lehman Roberts Company was the low bidder. So, well within our budget. So that looks good there. So
I didn't get a list in my packet.
Yeah, I didn't get a list.
I didn't get a list either, Joe.
Nobody did.
of what
Get a
now?
list.
A list of the bidders.
We ain't got
You
no-
want to pass that one down? I saw it once. You want to pass it down and let everybody look at it real quick?
Thanks, sir.
Sorry about that, y'all.
No wonder I couldn't find it.
Still looking, huh?
4-6.
Yeah.
And I think the good news is we all know the quality work that Lehman Roberts does. We've used them in the past, and for them to be the low bidder is a good thing for the city of Hernando, I think, for this project. And I'm just going to read them out so everybody can hear. American Services was $545,619. Cook and Son, $538,548. Lehman Roberts was $416.50. Double T was $480,063. Gregory Companies doing business as Murphy Paving was $483,755. And Slocum Construction Company was $429,200. So it's obvious that Lehman Roberts is the lowest bid, and with the city engineer's recommendation, we will be recommending that as the best bid.
You can keep. Okay.
Any questions?
Does this include Notting Hill Drive? Is that included in the,
It's not Notting Hill.
so what streets are
The
these?
biggest streets were Memphis Street and DeSoto Avenue. Those were 2 big ones. And then there's another group in that area over there. So Notting Hill is on the next list
Okay.
to be
okay.
bid.
Okay.
When
And
when the Notting Hill one does get bid, if you remember, we had some areas where the new paving met the old paving that wasn't like very flush and wasn't, that we may have to just have them take a look at that potentially, or have a look at it to kind of smooth out some of those areas where we're transitioning.
We can do that.
Just if that can be included some kind of way. I don't think it's not really large areas or anything like that, but it's pretty rough from where that last vendor.
We can take a look at that. We'll have a milling machine over there with the job, just like this job.
Okay.
Has a lot of milling involved in it.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Joe Frank? If not, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no, and that motion passes. Item 15 is to request a bond reduction on the Arbor Point Copperleaf subdivisions. You have it in front of you, along with a list of things that will still be under bond, and then there's a map back there with some circled areas of some of the next things that will be done. Joe, did you want to speak to this as well on the reduction of the bond?
Okay. A couple of weeks ago, they kind of asked us to kind of look at that bond and get it reduced, get it before the board. And so we went out there and kind of made that list, submitted that. They hadn't quite finished some of Memphis Street on the north end and the south end. You'll see that on there as a construction part under that total bond, and then you have a maintenance bond and that list of small items on there that they need to get done as far as getting completely finished.
Was there anybody here that wanted to speak on this topic? And we're reducing the bond to $152,500.
Yes.
Okay.
And this will cover all of the needed repairs?
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes. Go
I
ahead.
can't quite hear, but did Mr. Lauderdale explain that we're just reducing it to the amount that he believes will cover the remainder of the repairs, that we're not releasing it right now? Was that understood? I couldn't really quite hear.
Yes, I think that has been made clear for everyone, and you may have just made it clearer the way you said it.
Okay, all right, thank
Joe
you.
Frank, do you agree with that statement?
I do. I think we had a total bond of about $600,000 before they finished all their paving, so
Okay.
it gets reduced to that $152,000 number.
All right. Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Item 16 is PL 1785, which is the Crestview rezoning. Austin, would you like to come up?
Mayor, before we jump into this, I've had several constituents of mine who have reached out asking for us to table this for 2 weeks, given the changes that were made during the Planning Commission, so they can adequately prepare to research and come with their comments at our June 4th meeting. So I'd like to motion to table until our June 4th meeting.
Okay. There's a motion on the table. Is there a second? The motion on the table to table this till the next meeting on June 4th. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, there is a second. Any discussion on that motion?
Mayor, I have a comment, if I may.
Yes, sir, please.
You know, we've been working on this project for 2 to 3 months now, and it has been to the Planning Commission a second time and approved by them unanimously. And the plans that are before us today, based on all the revisions, as I understand it, those plans are now final, and the developer will not make any additional changes to that plan. And I just feel like we're to a point on this development that we just need to vote one way or the other so everybody can move forward.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Harris. Is there any other discussion before we vote? If not, we'll have a roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
Alderman Piper.
Aye.
Alderman Harris.
Nay.
Alderwoman Lynch.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Nay.
Alderman Robinson.
Nay.
Alderman Wicker.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ross.
Nay.
And the motion fails 4-3. So, I guess since that motion failed, we'll go on with our discussion. This is item 16, PL 1785.
Yes, sir. This is PL 1785. The request is to rezone 49 acres from A to PUD, identified as a parcel number in your staff report, located on the west side of Keeneland Drive, south of Milan, in Section 8, Township 3, Range 7. The applicant, Corey Brady, tonight is representing the owner of the property. As I mentioned, this is proposed to be a PUD rezoning, and I'll explain how we got to that point here in just a second. The future land use map of the city's general development plan designates this property as single-family low-density dependent, and this goes from Jaybird to McInville Road. The full descriptions in your staff report, and the associated maps kind of delineate where this parcel is proposed to be developed. How we got to this point tonight is the applicant first submitted for a straight R15 zoning and did provide a preliminary plat at the February Planning Commission meeting, which was denied. At the second meeting in February, the applicant requested to table to the second meeting in April to meet with residents and come up with a revised plat that addressed some of the concerns from that meeting, which he did, and the plat changed substantially. And at his request, was remanded back to the Planning Commission for a second hearing of the revised plat. So this was heard at the May Planning Commission meeting, and throughout the discussion of the meeting, the Commission's main concern was the conditions that the applicant was providing, notably the plat, the covenants, and the associated buffers. They wanted some assurances, and so the applicant revised the request to include those conditions into a PUD, which would lock those conditions and that plat in to the approval. So with that being said, the PUD, what it does is the plat you see in your staff report tonight would serve as the preliminary plat. So any changes to the plat or buffers or associated conditions would be required to come back to you for approval or denial. For approval or denial, I will direct you to the three criteria for a decision in our zoning ordinance: how this proposed amendment conforms to the general development plan, why the existing zoning district classification of the property is inappropriate or improper, and what major economic, physical, or social changes, if any, have occurred in the vicinity of the property in question that were not anticipated by the general development plan and have substantially altered the basic character of the area. The applicant did provide responses to each of those questions, and I did go over a brief description of how we got here tonight, and in your staff report I did include the various iterations of this plan that have gotten us to this point of the first application being the single access to Keeneland, the second iteration being the fully developed property to an R15 zoning with a connection to Singletree, and then the new iteration of the color plat you see in the front of your staff report of those same connections serving as primary access, but the lots on the south end of the development are quite a bit larger, and they provided those buffer areas as requested. In the covenants provided by the applicant, they provided for a minimum of 2,400 square foot home. The overall density is 1.1 dwelling units per acre. A total of 55 lots is proposed, 13.2 acres of which would be common open space. So they would meet the requirement of the 10%. So that was a brief synopsis of kind of how we got here tonight of the iterations. And I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions for Austin? Did the developer want to present? This would be a good time for that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, I'm Billy Myers. My address is 265 North Lamar, Oxford, Mississippi. I'm an attorney with Myers Law Group, PLLC. Here on behalf of the owner and applicant of this property, Chris John Developers, LLC. John Reeves and Chris Lamb are the principals of that LLC, and John Reeves is, of course, here with us tonight. The planner for this development is Corey Brady with Integrated Land Solutions, PLLC, and he's with us tonight as well, and we'll offer you evidence here shortly. The engineer for the firm for the project is IPD LLC, Ben Smith and Chance Walker, and Chance is here as well for any questions you may have. As Austin said, this is a rezoning application from property that was owned agricultural many, many years ago to a PUD. It was originally R15, as he said, because your general development plan suggests that the future uses of this property and the surrounding area would develop from 2007 as residential, single-family residential, as in fact it has done. The state law requires that in order to change zoning, which is a change of your ordinance here, it requires clear and convincing evidence of a material change in the character of the neighborhood and public need. Clearly, the evidence in this case supports that this property should not be agricultural anymore. The evidence to support this application is contained in your general development plan. If you'll recall, in 2007, that plan was adopted by the city after you hired experts to do the research, to do the work, to find the evidence that suggested single-family residential for this property going forward. And that's exactly what we're asking for in this application, is what the general development plan suggests should be at this location. I'll ask Corey Brady to come up now and address the three criteria that Austin stated are in your particular ordinance that supports this application.
Mayor, Alderman, thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Corey Brady, 9967 Bentwood Creek Cove, Collierville, Tennessee. I'm here again, as Billy mentioned, on behalf of John and Chris Lamb, representing this rezoning application. I hope I can answer any questions that each of you collectively have. I do, if you would allow, I'd like to give a very brief presentation. And I thought it was appropriate because this is the very slides that we showed to the Planning Commission at the most recent meeting. So I do want to point out one minor error. Now the proposed zoning is no longer R15. It is now PUD, Plan Unit Development, based on R15 zoning. So that being said, as Billy mentioned, the City of Hernando requires that we demonstrate the appropriateness of the change in the following ways. Number one, and most importantly, how the proposed amendment would conform to the City of Hernando's general development plan. Number two, why the existing zoning district classification of the property in question is inappropriate or improper, and that major economic, physical, or social changes, if any, have occurred in the vicinity of the property in question. This says that were not anticipated by the general development plan and have substantially altered the basic character of the area, which make the proposed amendment of the zoning district appropriate. Now, I set out to answer these questions, and this is in the text you provided to you with the staff report. The City of Hernando's adopted general development plan 2007 to 2027 classifies the subject property as a residential district category, single-family, low-density dependent. Single-family housing with urban services are recommended at a density of 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre. The associated location policy stipulates that the category should be located on a collector or major arterial streets. The associated zoning policy stipulates appropriate zoning classifications for the category are R12, R15, and R20. Now, I promise I'm not going to read a ton of slides to you guys tonight, but these are important. The infrastructure policy stipulates that sanitary, sewer, and public water services are required. The petition for zoning amendment conforms with all adopted policies accompanying the single-family, low-density dependent land use classification as it is before you today. Secondly is why is the existing zoning district classified as a property in question, why is it inappropriate or improper? And I suggest that the subject property is inappropriately zoned A, agriculture. According to Article 5 of the city's zoning ordinance, the A agricultural district is intended to, number one, provide an area for agricultural and rural uses within the city area. Two, encourage vigorous agricultural industry within the city's zoning jurisdiction. Three, to ensure that urban, suburban development occurs contiguous to existing urbanized or urbanizing areas. And four, prevent premature urban development in an area which are not adequately served by public facilities. I contend that the current A agricultural zoning district is inappropriate and improper in that, number one, it does not permit the residential character, lot sizes, or residential district densities, recommended by the city's general development plan. Number two, it prohibits urban/suburban development in the existing urbanized area. Number three, the agricultural zoning prevents urban development in an area that is adequately served by public infrastructure, being sewer and water. Number four, the subject property is surrounded on all sides by urbanized residential districts developed having access to public utility infrastructure. Lastly, what economic, physical, and social changes have occurred. This is an interesting question because it says have occurred in the vicinity of the property that were not anticipated by the general development plan and have substantially altered the basic character of the area. Well, we don't believe anything has happened in the area that was not anticipated by the general development plan. The general development plan recommended suburban residential growth. But we take that farther because it also is what changes have occurred, what physical changes have occurred. Well, the changes in the immediate vicinity, the subject property was annexed by the City of Hernando in 1990. Public water was installed along Mackinville concurrent with the north adjacent Milan Country development in 1987. Public sanitary sewer was extended to serve the southwest adjacent Loma Vista PUD in 1993. In 2006, the DeSoto County Regional Utility Authority constructed the Short Fork and Interceptor, providing public sewer to the subject property. In 2007, the City of Hernando adopted the General Development Plan 2007 to 2027, setting forth the general plan for development within its boundaries. Between the years of 2000 and 2023, the city experienced a 151% increase in population. In recent years, the majority of properties within a half mile of the subject property have been rezoned from the agricultural district to various single-family, multifamily, residential, and commercial zoning districts in support of the continued population growth, employment opportunities, and urbanization of the area. The south adjacent Loma Vista PUD was approved in 1993 to allow RM6 multifamily, high-density duplex residential development. And the east adjacent Forest Meadows was approved in 2005 to allow R30 overlay single-family residential development. So a lot of change has occurred in the immediate vicinity of this area. This is a couple of sheets of the City of Hernando's General Development Plan that I referenced. This is the policy that is guiding our development today. And in the introduction, it goes on. I want to say there are probably like 14 mentions in the introductory sections alone that talk about how this document guides what we're here today for. But you know, a couple sections here. Mississippi Code defines a comprehensive plan as a statement of public policy for the physical development of the entire municipality or county adopted by resolution of governing body. And then according to state law, zoning and other use regulations must be based upon a comprehensive plan. This means that zoning and subdivision regulations at a minimum must conform to the local comprehensive plan. And then lastly, the governing body uses comprehensive plan to take action on two types of physical development matters. One, measures specifically designed to implement a comprehensive plan, creating zoning ordinances, et cetera. And two are measures that routinely require legislative or governing authority approval, i.e. rezoning cases, public works, projects, et cetera. So the property that we are looking at is identified as the residential low-density dependent single family. My pointer doesn't work, but I know you guys all know your city quite well. It's immediately east or right of my pointer there and just south in the center of the illustration there. You'll see Milan Country Lane to the north, Thousand Oaks to the south of the property, Mackinville running north and south. Now, a little quote here again, usually a rezoning's conformance or nonconformance can quickly be established by looking at a land use plan map. That's from section 1, page 5 of the General Development Plan. So moving forward, what is single-family low-density development? When we as planners, when investors, when engineers look at properties, we use the city's General Development Plan as a guide. To us, it's right there with your zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations. These are instructions provided to us and give us the puzzle pieces upon which we need to play with to put things together. So for single-family housing with urban services, the purpose is the continued care of dependent single-family residential land uses is critical to keeping an environment stable, tranquil, and high-quality residential section. The location policy, as stated earlier, they should be located on collector and major arterial streets. Land use policy, the dependent classification development occurs at densities greater than 1 and less than 3 dwelling units per acre. The principal land use intended for this category includes single-family detached dwellings. And then buffer policies, these are very important. Density of new adjoining residential development should be compatible with existing residential areas, and a buffer may be provided when there is significant difference in densities. The appropriate zoning classification of this category, as Austin mentioned, are R12, R15, and R20. Again, the proposal before you today is requesting a plan unit development that's based on R15. Again, that was one of the zoning districts specifically mentioned in that policy. This is a copy of the existing zoning map. It shows A right in the center of the screen. That is about, composed of the majority of properties surrounding us are single-family residential in some capacity. Again, I mentioned Loma Vista. Of course, it's an outlier. It's a multifamily district, and there's commercial properties right immediately south of us as well. So if you look at this map, the property that we're talking about is surrounded in its entirety by zoned and developed residential properties. So R15, this is a copy of the bulk regulations that we based our PUD on. And there's some things I want to mention here, but R15, you can quickly understand, is based on a 15,000 square foot minimum lot size. R12 is based on a 12,000 square foot minimum lot size, and R20 is a 20,000 square foot minimum lot size. Each of these zoning districts have different bulk regulations, being minimum lot size, which I mentioned, minimum lot widths, maximum building heights, densities, building setbacks, et cetera. One thing I want to point out, that, however, is we took these as a foundational standard and built upon them and elevated them. Where we could have had a minimum lot width of 65 feet, we have a minimum lot width of 100 feet. So the point was we used the zoning district that was appropriate in the general development plan to develop the site, but we did modify by, I guess, decreasing, increasing, however you want to look at it, some of the regulations that guide the development. This was the plan that came before the MPC on February 13th, 2024. I caught this at the Planning Commission. My date structure right there is terribly inaccurate. That's embarrassing. Anyway, 49.06 acres is the gross property here. We had 80 lots proposed at the time, 1.63 density units per acre with a minimum lot size of 15,000 square foot. 9.5 acres of common open space at 19.2%. This plan complied in its entirety with the recommendation of general development plan and the zoning we were looking for. However, at that meeting, there was significant concern from the neighbors that were expressed. Environmental considerations, various considerations. So what we did is we took it back, as Austin mentioned. Chance and Ben put the kind of pencil back to the paper and said, okay, how can we accommodate the neighbors? What can we do to do that? This is the plan they came back with. And it's still 49.06 acres. It's the same boundary of the property, but we reduced it to 55 lots. Again, a reduction from 80 to 55 lots, 31% reduction in lots. And Ben then elected to establish estate lots along the south and the east corner of the property where the primary concern from the neighbors arose. There's a lot of vegetation in that area, there's some topography in that area, and there were some existing drainage considerations in that area that members from Forest Meadows or residents of Forest Meadows came out and spoke about their concerns, a couple from Heritage Oaks, and then the Milam country residents came out and concerned about those environmental considerations. So this plan was what was taken to the Milam, I don't want to say just Milam country, because we had a neighborhood meeting at Mr. Vernon Edwards' house back in April sometime. I don't remember the exact date, forgive me. And there were 12, 14 individuals there, perhaps 15. And we talked about this in great length. And again, they underscored the fact that environmental considerations of this area that we're specifically preserving here in addition to establishing the 6.5 acre common open space at 13%, it's an additional 18.5 acres of tree preservation. Now, it's estate lots. Those lots will have individual homes on them, but it's limited as a conservation development of those lots. It's restricted by the ACC guidelines, and now some language in the PD. But again, this development, what you'll notice to accommodate some of the changes that we addressed or concerns of the neighbors, along Short Fork Creek, there's been a concern about erosion going along Short Fork Creek, which is a water of the state. It's under the state's jurisdiction. We've provided a minimum 110-foot buffer along that creek. Now that goes from 110 feet to upwards of 135, but we'll call it a 110-foot buffer. And the purpose of doing that is to preserve that whole basin to appropriately buffer the stream in accordance with MDEC's requirements, MDEQ's requirements, but also allow the state to get in there, do whatever maintenance they want, correct any stream erosion issues, but also significantly minimize our direct impact upon that stream. And I want to make it clear, none of our development drains immediately into this stream. We will have detention ponds at engineered locations that will collect the water, store it before releasing into those ponds. And that will be reviewed by our city engineer, Mr. Joe Frank here, MDEQ, and where necessary, FEMA, because, as we're getting into any flood changes or elevation certificates, low Mars, what have you. So this project, what it is while we have 55 lots, they are based on the 15,000 square foot minimum standard. But the lot sizes, again, are 100 foot wide, so it's the same lot size from the street. It's the same lot width as you see in the R20, which is the largest. It's 100 foot wide by 150 deep. When we compare this, and we'll get back to that plan, we'll compare how this stacks up in the numbers. Crestview Point, our proposal is highlighted in yellow, 49 acres, 15,000 square foot minimum lot size, 55 lots, is a density of 1.12 units to the acre. I've added Forest Meadows, Notting Hill, Lakes of Cedar Grove, Saddlebrook, Milam Country, Heritage Oaks, and Loma Vista to show how each of those phases of development compare to what we're proposing. And the reason we did this is because we're showing compatibility with the neighborhood and responding to the general development plan, and densities lower than what the plan even recommended for the site. So we are at 1.12 units per the acre. Forest Meadows, on average, if I take all phases, it's 1.5 units to the acre. There are some larger, or some more dense and some less dense. Getting in through Notting Hill, they're all 1 to 2 units to the acre. Saddlebrook is a high one at 2.8. Loma Vista, of course, goes without saying, 4.98. And then we look at Heritage Oaks, Thousand Oaks, or Milam Country, and those are the lowest. That, average of 0.88 on Milam Country and 0.57 units on Heritage Oaks or Thousand Oaks. So again, and there's some other tabulations below. When we start excluding outliers, you can see how our densities compare. Again, we're at 1.12 units to the acre, and that's important for a number of reasons. So when we look at the agricultural zone, 1.5 acre lots, or even the AR zone, we're at the exact same density of what that AR zoning would be, and that is to comply or really to respect the neighbors surrounding the area. This is what we would call a cluster development, developing in the areas where we can, and then maintaining and preserving the upper areas outside of the valley areas, preserving the hills, preserving the trees, preserving the drainages. This revision creates no impact on Forest Meadows from a drainage standpoint, and there would be no direct drainage impounded upon any Milam Country or anything. Obviously, they're uphill of us. So I wanted to limit to just those. I have a ton of data to help answer questions with regard to our lot sizes, average lot sizes, comparative lot sizes, or adjacent to adjacent subdivisions. But in summary, this plan complies with the general development plan's recommendations. We comply with the city zoning ordinance, and we comply with the article subdivision regulations for the city for connectivity to adjacent properties. There's a couple minor points. We still are proposing a designated or dedicated, segregated, whichever dated word we want to add, construction access. So no construction access will come through Milam Lane, no construction access will come through Keeneland. We'll put up a physical barricade at those two access points and construct a berm, at those points. So there can physically be no one drive through the barricade. When we go to build the streets and tie in, we'll remove that berms and those barricades. So that we have an agreement with that property owner to allow the construction access through the entire term of the subdivision's construction. That's really it. Austin mentioned the private covenants that we have provided, and we've done that working as a foundation with Forest Meadows. We took their covenants and built upon those. So our covenants exceed the covenants of any subdivision immediately adjacent to us. And I'm sure there are other things that we'll get into, but that basically summarizes the changes that we've made since, I guess, the first February meeting I was a part of. So if there's any questions I can answer, I'm happy to.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Brady? Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else with the developer group that wanted to speak? All right. I will take this time then, since there don't seem to be any direct questions. I know there appear to be a lot of people here that are ready to speak on the topic. I noticed some familiar faces. I do want to make sure we run an orderly meeting. Make sure that when you come up to the podium, you state your name and your address for the clerk, and direct your comments to the board, not to the developing group. And then if there are questions that the board wants to ask the developers, we'll bring the developers back up. I'd like, since there are so many people, to keep the comments to 3 to 4 minutes each in the interest of time, because we have a whole nother subdivision to look at after this one. So who would like to come up and speak? Mr. Bellflower?
Before I introduce the other topics, I would like to give this to you.
Thank you, sir.
And I also want to thank each of these aldermen and the mayor that participated in our little terrain walk out there. Really do appreciate that. First thing I want to discuss is the single-family detached dwellings are to be located on a collector or a future or a major arterial road. McInville and Sweeney is the only principal arterial road in this area. Developer said on Tuesday, 14 May 2024, that they do not own the land that would give them access to McInville. Not only does the packet I gave you identify McInville Sweeney as the major principal arterial road and access to that property, but it also defines that and says that we cannot use a local road as a thoroughfare. So what's going to end up happening here is Singletree is going to be established as a thoroughfare, either going out straight up Singletree and getting to Bahia, or straight to Milan Lane, getting to Bahia. So that is one of the points I want to bring up, and I've got somebody following me that will discuss that a little more. Now, getting to the PUD itself, the plans that were given to me, on Thursday, I believe, of last week. I want to go back to Article 18, Paragraph 6, that requires a 15-day notification in a local newspaper. Changing it Tuesday night from a straight R12 to a PUD is a major change. And based on that article, the articles at least that I read in there, it requires that this had to be published in a local newspaper, giving us 15 days. We only got this on Thursday. We only had one meeting on Sunday. We did not have an opportunity to explore any of the definitions of what a PUD would do. But I have also, if you could put up that preliminary plot for me. I know that one of the aldermen tonight mentioned that this preliminary plot has become a final plot. It still says preliminary subdivision plot. So if it has changed, then we as a neighborhood needed to know about that. I want to reference this plot because I have two or three plots that I'm really concerned about that are within 50 feet of South Fork Creek. Plots number 24, 25, and 26. If you notice, part of that creek is in the floodplain of one of those lots. And then if you go up to lots 10 and 16, you see that they are within, very close to that creek. We're going to know within the next 3 days if there's another major rain event that's being predicted, what that creek can do and how it's going to flow and how the rate of control is. Now, another thing is the PUD plans calls that a proposed park and playgrounds. I do not see this on that plot at all. And it's a requirement. Also, in the PUD's definition, Article 9, Plan and Overlay Districts, Code of Ordinances, it says provisions for water supply, sanitary sewers, stormwater drainage, and connections shall be made to the satisfaction and requirement of the City of Hernando and the appropriate state authority, and that all improvements are to be installed, and this key word, maintained by the developer, unless other arrangements are made and approved by the city. I am hoping that our city will not get involved in a sewer project or a storm drainage project that clearly in this PUD ordinance says that it is the responsibility of the developer. The playground or park can include water, but it should, based on 49 acres, that park should be 4.9 acres. And that is not mentioned. Now, I'm going to be followed by some other individuals who will get into more details. But I want to thank you again for coming out there. I want to thank the developer for giving us permission when we took the planning commissioners out there. I want to emphasize that nobody in this group has questioned that individual's character or anything at all. And I will be followed by some other members of our group that will get into a little more detail. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bellflower. Who would like to speak next?
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is, I go by Ed, but my real name is L. Vernon Edwards. Some people call me other names, but I live at 1155 Milam Lane on God's country, as I call it. One thing that I regret is that I missed the last meeting with the planning board. And one thing that is obvious in this is that we are moving from an R15 to a PUD. And in the directions as I read on what is required in the PUD, it says that there must be an approved preliminary site plan, which when zoning is granted, will then govern the development of the land and all the development plans associated with it. And that's in one of your documents there. The plan that I have seen that is considered to be the preliminary plan that was shown, there are some issues in it that I personally have based on a little experience in the back of my career, if you will. We're talking about low-density housing, up to 2 to 3 homes per acre. And in fact, if you multiply 15 times 3, you have more than three houses sitting on more than 1 acre, because an acre is about 43,560 square feet. And so as a result of that, looking at the density of the houses that are there, I agree with the 10 times or 100 times 150 being the 15,000 square foot lots that are there and planned, and certainly would justify that. The basic changes, as was mentioned earlier, to the land, I have it on good faith that my aunt, who was a wheeler that lived here many years ago, she's now gone. Her family helped farm this land, and it was agricultural at the time. And as you well know, we're moving from an agricultural zone to a PUD zone. But one of the things that is of concern is the erosion problem. In the plans that I'll show you in just a minute with that we've put together and looked at, there are issues of the amount of or the volume of water that is coming off of the hills that are on either side of this property. You have the eastern side, which has very steep slopes to it, and you have the western side, which is less high, but all of the water flows to Short Fork Creek, and we'll show you a picture of what does occur at times when we have heavy rainfall for a period of a few days. One of the issues that we need to be concerned about is the water that's coming off of the eastern side of those slopes that are running down, because the homes, as you will see in a minute, the homes are built right up against what's called, basically up against the line of where the hills are considered to be released, and we're down the flat land when we're talking about the forested area versus the area where the homes are going to be completed and working. One of the issues that we have looked at also in the creek is the method that is going to be used to cross the creek from east to west or west to east in this particular case. I understand there's going to be a culvert there, and that's going to handle all the heavy construction material that's going to be moving across that particular access that they have there. Short Fork Creek basically starts in the vicinity of the McInville and Commerce, and it progresses through generally just to the north of Walmart, then it progresses down through Creek Street and on into the area that we'll be talking about and showing. And we're not sure that a box culvert can handle the erosion problem that goes along with that volume of water that goes through. So if I could, if you would mind starting on the first slide. This is a screenshot, and the reason we show this is to look at the density of the forest that's there, which is over the last really 20 years has multiplied significantly. My house, sitting out on the patio watching them bale hay a few years ago, the property was being properly used. Now that's all very thick trees and undergrowth. Obviously the same thing is on the eastern side of the creek where there's a lot of growth. And you can see the area in the middle. It shows the creek. This is a picture that was taken, or a shot that was taken by satellite about 2 months ago that we took this picture off of Google. So the canopy and all of the undergrowth that's there, basically we're talking about how is that going to be moved or burned in the area. We certainly did not want the burning issue. We experienced that when the Compelled Church was installed. There was burning that went on there, and some of the folks in the neighborhood were complaining about the environmental impact that that had on them as well as their breathing applications. Would you slide to B, too? There's an item there in the red that you see down in the lower right side, and that's called the area where the forest stops and we kind of get to the flat land. The ridge, as it's called, it stops at the ridge of the mountain, the hills there, and everything above that is considered to be preserved after the construction of the homes. The question is, there are also lots that are allocated there that I understand are going to be sold after the time that this is put on the market. and there will be an issue of how much damage they will do to the hillside, how much they will pull off of the hill, and how are they going to navigate up those slopes and deal with the slope that's there. And there's some other consequences. The other thing is that as the homes are built that are on the right-hand side of that development, there's high potential that there's going to be a significant amount of water going down into those areas in the backyards in particular, and perhaps the homes. The amount of water that's coming off of that area, some way is going to have to be handled so that it can move to the creek. And if you'd shoot the next one, please. This is a graphic that was developed off of a geological information system that the people from the Corps of Engineers utilized. And if you'll scroll down, just scroll down, you can see the growth of the creek over the several years that he recorded all the information. If you'd stop right there, that would be great. You can see that it has widened significantly over that basically 20-year period of time. Also, in that particular area, you'll find that there's a lot of undergrowth that has to be considered that is going to be carried out into the creek itself as the water goes through the settlement there and winds up in the creek. There's going to be issued debris and so forth that's going to come off the mountain, off the hills, and end up in the backyards of those places. I put a little note on the bottom, if you'd roll it up just a little. Put a little note on the bottom. It says basic an acre is 43,560 square feet. If you multiply that by the volume of water, if we had a 3-inch rain over a period of 3 days, and you'd had a cubic foot less than a 12 by 12 by 3 foot enclosure, you'd get about 3 3/4 gallons of water during that 3-inch rainstorm. If you multiply that out, you can see it's about 163,000 gallons that would eventually fall over the period of time. So a significant amount of water is going to be implanted on that property. The issue, there's two things. A lot of that water is being retained now by the trees and the undergrowth, so it doesn't get to the creek. The trees and the undergrowth absorb that water. But now with the homes in there, you're talking about impervious surfaces, and that water is going to have to go in a storm drain. And the storm drains, as we understand, based on the, right up in the plan, the proposal is that there are 3 stations that would carry storm water into the creek itself. One more.
Mr. Edwards, if you could get nearer to wrapping up, you've gone substantially over time.
Okay, I'm sorry, excuse me. Go ahead. Okay, go to the next one. We'll blast through it. This is an example of the creek. This was back in 21, and it shows the flow. The creek is about 10 feet deep in that area. If you can stop that one, go to the next one. This is the most recent one that we have. You can see that the amount of erosion that's going on in that area, significant. You can also see as it progresses that the water is encroaching upon the landmass alongside the creek. You'll shortly see examples of where material is floating down the creek itself. And as a side note, my boys would love to try to navigate that with I'm on some kind of boat or canoe going down through there. This is an example of the erosion that's back in the property, and some of you have seen that, and we appreciate those who did come out to see what was going on with this. My old school world was that if you put an eye on it, it's better than 100 words or 100 comments if you haven't seen it. It shows there was a lot of damage to the lower property. You probably saw in it. You can see the water in the background sitting on the property itself. That's down at the end of Milam. The water not only is in this area, but it comes down Milam itself into the lower area of Milam Lane, as you can see. Okay. One example of the creek, you can see a lot of rock in the bottom, so there's possibility we're going to run in, when you do the development, you're going to run into the issue of gravel. Go ahead. It's another example of the erosion. That's the home that's on the end of the street. Go ahead. This says that all development is located north and west of the ridge line, which I was talking about, the ridge line, that imaginary line that's there. And post-development drainage is discharged to Short Fork Creek. So it says that all the water that's accumulated is down into the creek from the build site. Go ahead. This is up in Keeneland. This is an example of what's happening up in Keeneland. The water is coming off the backside of the hill, and you can think on the opposite side, which is where we're going to be talking about development and what the consequences of that would be. Go ahead. Go ahead. This is an example of where there was not a proper planning done. I was living in Pacifica, California at the time. There was a severe period of rain, and that's a mudslide that went down behind. You can see the houses that are butted up against the ridge line, if you will. The mud went into several homes, and 3 of those homes had children that didn't make it out of their bed. So we don't want to have a situation where we've stripped all the trees and foliage off, and we present an opportunity for mud to slide into homes. Okay. And there it is, another day, another time. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor, Alderman, gentlemen,
Mr.
ladies.
Edwards.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Any
Sorry to
questions
go
for
over
Mr.
time.
Edwards?
But again, thanks to the folks who did go out and see the project.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, is there someone that has another vantage point to present? Yes.
Gentlemen, the videos are obviously clear evidence of the damage and destruction from that creek, and it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. So how does this help Hernando? How does putting another subdivision in this area going to help Hernando? And I don't see how it could. Every bit of evidence we have, and it's shown, is that it's going to add to the problems of the citizens of Hernando. Initially, the problems identified were the large hill, which is, we got to have that hill for obvious reasons. The trees help the creek from overflowing, and all the other things that go on there with the nature, just natural things that have taken care of itself over the years, are going to be gone. And they're not going to be able to be replaced. You can't replace that. There's going to be houses and concrete. The displacement of rainwater is extensive. The erosion is getting worse every single year, Increased traffic, we know it's going to be increased traffic. We know the roads are going to have to be expanded. It's going to cost us. It's going to cost Hernando. Infrastructure issues. There are already infrastructure issues, a lot in the city of Hernando that we should be dealing with instead of worrying with another subdivision. We have some great subdivisions and developments coming along across from high school and in that area. We got some great stuff going on. We don't need this. We just don't need it. So who's benefiting from this? Who's benefiting from this? Obviously, the investors, the developers, the attorneys. They're getting money for all this. That's their incentive to continue to come back. I don't know if many of them live in Hernando. I do emphasize with you all, and I sense a desire to improve and see Hernando progress. If I was in one of your chairs, I would see where it would be a problematic vote, thinking that somehow I must comply with the investors but the evidence is clear that this is not going to be good for Hernando. It's just not. During the meeting with the zoning board on 14th of May, I thought maybe there was a chance that the developers were thinking about us, and they wanted what's best for us. But then the attorney indicated the hill was absolutely going to be leveled if he did not get that R-15. He may have said it twice. It's just a way to make money that, could be spent better. And meanwhile, the water damage continues, erosion continues. I don't know what they're going to do about the traffic situation. It's already bad enough you can't even get out on the street. So inside the city limits, the county of DeSoto, the state of Mississippi, we are here. And you don't have to destroy all this stuff to put another subdivision in. Everybody wants to move to Hernando, everybody I talk to. And they don't want to go to Senatobia or Olive Branch. They want to come here. So how do we keep them wanting to come here, and how do we keep improving? Well, you don't do it with this. This is not a good idea. So I would just like to submit to you, sort through the legalese that you've heard, that everything is within the law and a rule, and make an honest and good decision about this project. Who's making the money? Keep that in mind, because clearly this does not help Hernando at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I did not get the name of the man that just spoke. Could you give that to me, please?
He didn't state it.
He stated.
Would you state your name for the clerk?
Tim Harvey.
Mr. Barber, Tim Barber.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Christy Galbach, and I live at 1255 Milam Lane. I'm requesting this zoning be denied at this time due to concerns about access points of the proposed PUD. Crestview Point needs its own primary access point. I've done some research and found another local rezoning that dealt with the same concerns about access that many residents with this proposed development have. In 2019, City Hall meetings began to attempt to rezone an area of land west of town. This area is now being developed as Scotts Meadow. It too was originally agricultural and rezoned as a PUD. Just like this proposal, the developer attempted to only use stub-out streets existing in surrounding neighborhoods. We know these subdivisions as Weatherby Place and Oak Manor. However, one subdivision hired an attorney to represent them in an attempt to request access be bought for the proposed development to have a primary entrance located on Highway 304. In turn, the owner did purchase additional property to create a designated entrance for this proposed development. Mr. Myers should remember this because he was the attorney representing the development. I'm requesting that the owner of this property purchase and designate a primary entrance for Crestview Point because the precedent has been established. Furthermore, no subdivision in the city of Hernando does not have its own primary access. I dare say that the city does not want this development or any other for that matter to undermine the precedent that has been set. The comprehensive plan does state that areas zoned R should be located on major arterial, minor arterial, or collector streets. The plan does not say they should be located near or connected to, but on. I believe this is a literal interpretation due to the volume of traffic that an area zoned R will create. Local streets cannot safely handle the volume an arterial or collector street can. to that, I have measured the streets designated as points of access for Crestview Point. Singletree is 21 feet wide. Milam Lane is 21 feet wide. West Keeneland Drive is 23 feet wide. In the Scotts Meadow development that I mentioned earlier, the city chose to abandon a city stub-out street altogether located on Royal Lane. The minutes state that there was a concern about the street being too narrow to handle the traffic. Royal Lane, just like Singletree and Milam Lane, is 21 feet wide. Singletree and Milam Lane are narrow streets with no curbs, no gutters, and no sidewalks. The proposed access to Crestview would create major safety concerns for all of Milam Country residents, in addition to many local Hernando residents who frequent the subdivision for recreation. Crestview Point needs its own primary access on McInville. Lastly, the property line located on Singletree is offset on either side of the street. Because the proposed PUD would require curbs and gutters and sidewalks, how would the design of the entrance look as you approach the development? Also, where will their neighborhood sign go? Singletree and West Keeneland Drive are incompatible access points for the proposed development and create significant safety and traffic concerns for the adjoining subdivisions. Mr. Mayor and Board, please consider denying this study at this time for further investigation and impact this will have on the entire city. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stevenson, were you coming up?
John Stevenson, 1589 Johnston Road, Hernando, Mississippi. The reason I've come here tonight, basically to support a friend, John Reeves, who I've known for many years. Very good man. And I think he's got an excellent reputation as a developer. I also, I'm building my brother a house right now in Forest Meadows, right on J. Bird Lane. So this affects my brother. I own the golf property down the street, so this affects my business. I think it's an excellent development. But what I'm hearing from my neighbors and my friends who are behind me is I'm hearing traffic, I'm hearing water, and then I'm hearing a lot of fear and anxiety. Your job as, I'm not going to educate on your job, but your job as leaders, in my mind, is to help us find common ground and solutions when people have fear, and then we have the law that tells us, and y'all are trying to bring people together to make an equitable solution. I have trust and faith that y'all will do that. As for the traffic, it's hard for me to say. I really don't understand the traffic issue quite as well. I haven't really explored it. But the water issue I can speak to as a developer myself. That is governed by MDEQ. That is governed by EPA. And MDEC is going to require in any subdivision plan and any permit that they're going to issue that the same or less water goes into Short Fork Creek that does before the development is done. So in my mind, they talk about erosion and this changes in the streams. Well, if you know anything about streams, they always change course. And this is nothing new there. The only way you're not going to make that stream change course is if you riprap it like y'all are doing on several different sections of this same stream with, I believe it's in NCRS grants. The problem you got is MDEC is not going to allow a developer to touch those streams like this. So but they will allow us most of the time to detain and then slow release the water into there, which should decrease the volume of the water flow in the creek. So I would propose to you that, just from my experience in dealing with MDEC, that this is going to help the water issue for that subdivision and the subdivision's neighborhood, not hurt it. Now, that being said, I know that Forest Meadows has a whole bunch of problems because of the way that neighborhood was developed. But that's because I believe that part of it was developed under county jurisdiction, and then part of it was developed under city jurisdiction. And I think that was just a mess that happened. But I don't believe that's the case now. We have Joe Frank who can oversee it from start to finish, and I believe that'll help. So, and then lastly, they talk about, oh, we don't need these houses, but 15,000 square foot house is a third an acre, and you got a 2,400 square foot minimum. But in today's cost environment, you're talking about $450,000 houses minimum and up. These are not starter homes. These are nice homes. So I just ask y'all to take that into consideration, and I'd ask y'all to approve the subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you.
Who else would like to speak?
Hello. I'm Priscilla Harbor. I live at 1485 Milam Lane. And I've spoken at both these things. What I wanted to say to start with is the commissioners were caught between a rock and a hard place in this last vote. They worked very, very hard to get it, to try to provide us with a PUD, and they required a wording and asked that the tree preserve, they wanted the PUD to spell out exactly how that would preserve trees. And in this PUD, I think you'll see, and they also addressed the subdivision and the permits by the MDEQ. Well, you will see in the PUD that they have presented to you that, first of all, it says draft in many places and subject to change. So I would hope that if y'all, whatever your decision is, that you require a final permanent record of what they will exactly provide, because if not, all of it's going to come back on the city. All of it, all of the upkeep, all of the maintenance, all of the repairs to anything. So, and we already have heard that there is no money for any of the repairs, like in Forest Meadows from the city. And so we need to learn from history and not create more subdivisions that are going to have more of these same problems and then have no money to help us with them. So that's what I ask from you, to make sure that that their wording for the tree preserve tells how, it does say that they will have one house per lot, and we're worried about those 5 larger lots, 5 to 7. And so they do say that they'll have one house per lot, but they don't say. They also say that they can cut down as many trees as they want for the yard. That they can cut down trees for a yard. They don't specify how large the yard can be, so they could cut down that whole lot and say that's my front yard. They don't want trees up. So it comes down to, is there really a true tree preserve, and how can that be worded exactly so that there is not too much removal of trees, because we know the trees are the main thing that's going to help with that water flow. So that's one thing I requested. And the word draft needs to be omitted and say this is what the final proposal, and that this is how we are going to be legally responsible. The last thing that they asked for was to pull MDEQ permits. The MDEQ permits only cover that area during construction. They say that they are not interested. They have no control over post-construction. So when they do something like the culvert, the 4-box culvert for a bridge, during construction, that may provide a bridge and allow all those heavy construction vehicles to get over. And then after it's donated to the city, you have over 160 cars coming through on a regular basis. How much is that going to hold up? The developers are not going to be responsible for that. The city is. So when you start talking about all of these things that MDEQ will provide, and will try to help make sure that the creek is protected during construction, not afterwards. So then what are we going to be responsible for as a city afterwards? And is the money that's collected from these homes as tax dollars, is that going to be enough to offset the money that y'all are going to be required to provide the city services that are already not being provided to Forest Meadows because the money's not there? So that's what I would like for y'all to, like Christie, I request that it be denied at this time. And please require a permanent plan before you accept this. One last note, their engineer told me to my face that, Prissy, your flooding is none of our concern. So I want y'all to have that understanding that they will get the MDEQ permits. They will abide by those during construction. But they're really not too concerned about making sure that all of this is in place so that after they leave, it's no longer their baby and we're stuck with it. So that's why I was asking, please make sure that, that they do have the proper wording, and don't count on the MDEQ. I've been in contact with them. I've been in contact with the Corps of Engineers. The Corps of Engineers are alerted now, and they are concerned. They said that if they start having trouble with it, they'll come out and they will place requirements, and then it might be up to the city to correct those things that the Corps of Engineers require. Because if there's any kind of damage to this streamline, which goes to Coldwater Lake, which goes to Arca Butler, they're very concerned about that because Arca Butler Dam, as you know, is being repaired, and so they don't want any more water added to this waterway. And they told you that it will add some water. The retention ponds, you know, are their control effort for this. And so I would like to see that the wording on those two is also enough to help us know that it's going to work. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The things that she just said, are those facts?
Who are you
Facts.
asking the questions of?
I'm asking, like, to Austin
Austin, would you address, which questions in particular?
about, like, MDEQ and the Corps of Engineers being concerned. Are those exact?
I don't know about that.
I can tell you the contact, the people I've talked with, the MDEQ people, I can tell you the contact.
Well, I mean, I know where they are in a development, and I know where we as a city have tried to bridge the gap between developers and when a development is finished and who it goes back on. Because we as a city have had some financial obligations because it was dropped. We've made some changes in our guidelines with developments in the meantime to try to bridge that gap, to hold the developers accountable for issues that arise during these type developments. So that's why I was asking you that question.
Well, I did some research before I came here.
Okay.
I would not put anything forward.
I'm not saying you made it up. I'm just saying, yeah.
I can help you if you want to.
Yeah, I wasn't saying you made it up. I just wanted to know, was that a level that anyone else knew was an exact gray area that we have no say-so over?
Yeah, we got a city engineer who knows all about this.
Yeah.
He can speak to the fact,
Right.
for our benefit.
Could you kind of talk about how MDEQ and
Okay.
Corps will manage things there and what will be required by them?
Right, I just kind of want that clarity mentioned.
So, we'll have to have 4 approvals, at least 4 approvals. MDEQ will handle stormwater and wastewater. So when they apply to MDEQ with their plans, the first or second thing they're going to ask on that type project, has the Corps of Engineers reviewed your project? And so then they're going to have a review by the Corps. Somebody from the Corps will visit that site and give an opinion on what they're asking, what type of permit will they ask for from the Corps. There's a lot of different kind of permits they can ask for. And then for their water, they'll have to go to Health Department to get their approval to provide water service. And they'll ask us, ask the city, can they support the subdivision with the water supply that the city has? City will have to sign, put some information for them to get their approval from the Health Department. So that's four things.
Right, I just wanted some clarity because I didn't want it to just be up in the air that these developments that we just have no control, because we do. And we have a lot of entities that we have to have in place and follow their guidelines before we can move forward or developers can move forward. I mean, we as a city are not going to take on that type of a financial liability.
Can I ask Mr. Munger? So,
You can come back up if you have one question real quick.
Does the MDEQ then, is it only for during construction? Are they concerned with post-construction?
Answer that again.
MDEQ, their permits?
Okay.
Are their permits just for during construction? Are they concerned with post-construction?
Their permit will allow them to get underway with construction, with their plans that they're gonna submit.
If they
So
do
that
not,
will allow them to get under construction, meet their guidelines, and meet the city's guidelines.
but just for construction, they're not concerned with post-construction, right? That's what I've been told several times before, not just on one person. I've talked to at least 5 people.
At some point in time, when the people begin to move in the houses or build the houses, the city will take responsibility then. After it's all constructed, and they put up post bonds for their work.
Austin, could you address one statement that was made so we get some clarity? I know the answer, but for the record, could you state again about the preliminary plan, how to be governed and things like that? That this is not a draft. Could you explain that again? That
Yes, sir.
they'll be governed by that document?
The PUD that's in front of you and the preliminary plat that you have in front of you would be serving as the site plan. And so that would be locked into what those lots are gonna look like. The next step after the processes Joe Frank would have would be for an application for final plat. And what that would do is give everyone the assurances that the final product matches what was preliminarily approved tonight. And so that site plan you see in front of you is the preliminary plat.
So basically, it's not a draft plan. It's gonna be, if any is approved or denied, that plan will govern the plan unit development, correct?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to hear it from your office, so, you know.
That's a good question, thank you.
And then also about, another thing came up about tree preservation. So could we address that?
Yes, sir. So one of the concerns from the planning commission was the tree preservation on that back property line. And I might call Corey back up just to double check behind me. But the buffers that he's provided in that site plan on, I'm sure I can put a number of the pages there, but you see a non-disturb buffer is 100 feet on that back line and a 20-foot buffer on the back line of lots 26 through 29. Those would be required to be untouched. And then I'm gonna get him to speak a little bit more clear on the tree preservation for the home sites that are governed by the covenants. He's on that road.
Corey, would you come back up and address that one
And
question?
those will be tied to either the approval or the denial. Those will be tied to whatever happened, correct? That, for clarity, so we can get some clarity.
Okay, to be clear, I'm only addressing these comments. This isn't a part of our rebuttal, I'm assuming? or
No,
there's still
we
individuals?
just, no, this is my,
This is one question.
my question.
So we stipulated in the documents, and well, I want to back up. That 100-foot non-disturb buffer, we added that since the planning commission. That's the first time these guys have seen the additional layer from the planning commission we put on, and that was provided to provide them an additional assurance.
That's my point.
And then the non-disturb language, so what we can do with the PD is we can regulate it to the extent, and the intent in the document, the text you have for the PD conversion, is to allow one single-family home on each one of those estate lots. And disturbance is limited to, PD language along the lines, I don't have it in front of me, perhaps we can pull it up. Removal, grading associated with the driveway or access and the home and accessory structures, and a reasonable, establishment of a reasonable lawn. That, the intent is clearly stated as a preservation area. So that's how we've addressed it. To take it one step further, then we have private conditions, covenants, restrictions that an architectural control committee will govern privately because the city doesn't have jurisdiction over that. And in those covenants, there will be percentages, limitations imposed. But again, to try to, again, another laurel leaf, if there is one, since the planning commission, we never discussed that additional 9-foot disturbance. But that was to give those residents along Thousand Oaks further comfort that at least we know nothing's going to happen within that 100 feet. And that exceeds the zoning ordinance 4 times. It's 20 foot's required, 100 foot's proposed, and then on the north side, we're complying with the ordinance. So that's our intent. If there's more language, more meat we need in the PD document, we'll do it. The reason draft is on that PD document is for this conversation. That document may change at the will of the board.
Now, the way it's zoned right now, agriculture, could they just go in and knock down all the trees?
Yes, sir.
So
By law, they
you're-
could-
You're preserving the trees by changing it.
Well, yes, absolutely. By law, they can go out there today and clear the land for agricultural purposes. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back, I know, has been trying to come up to speak.
I'm Tommy McDonald, live at 1060 Milam. The traffic is the issue. As it stands now, it's going to create a hardship for adjoining streets that will be used for the entrance, and that's my main concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I like that shirt. Yes, ma'am.
Teresa Pino, 1335 Milam Lane. I'm opposed to the rezoning. I'm not going to go back over all that you've heard tonight already. What I do want to say is that it's pretty easy to manipulate numbers in your favor. It's also easy enough to pick and choose passages from our comprehensive plan that support your cause and conveniently leave out those that don't. I've read and reread and read again the comprehensive plan and all the zoning laws of Hernando. I have scrolled page after page after page, reading it and rereading it. And some of the things that stuck out to me in our comprehensive plan, and I'm not going to quote it word for word, but the gist is that you had some goals in mind in 2007 when that was put together, and that was to preserve open space and to allow the land to, for one of the things is to recharge our aquifer. Open land, water soaks through, recharges our aquifer. That's super important. And that doesn't happen if it's covered in concrete. I also wanted to preserve our trees, which I think Hernando has developed a tree ordinance. And to preserve our hometown way of life. That's why people want to move to Hernando, because it's hometown way of life. Now, I've heard a lot about agricultural zoning, and it makes it seem like that's only to raise cows or grow soybean. Well, I've been on Milam Lane for 32 years. My lot's zoned agricultural. Thousand Oaks is AR. Short Fork is agricultural. Short Fork Farms. The Country Club, Hernando Country Club, all that land's zoned agricultural. So when you look at the zoning laws, the list of things that could be done on agricultural land, it's a laundry list of things that can be approved for agricultural land. I don't really like being threatened, and I feel like I've been threatened personally that if this is not approved, they're going to clear cut that, which I think would be going against our tree ordinance, but I'm not really sure on that. And they put cows back there or grow soybeans back there. It comes down to, if you're going to look at the comprehensive plan, that property, they're only using part of it because on the comprehensive plans, it shows it as one piece that does adjoin Mackinville Road, where they would have access to it. But they don't have all of it, so they're wanting to put this in the middle of what we call paradise. You know, they want to pave paradise and put up a parking lot. It just boils down to it's not in keeping with the surrounding homes. And when I say surrounding, I'm talking about people whose property are going to back up to this, are going to touch this. Not across Mackinville and Lakes of Cedar Grove or Shadowbrook or any of these other places that were listed that make the numbers look good. That's why they were listed. It's just not in keeping with the surrounding neighbors. And the engineers can get up here and tell you whatever they want to tell you. I lived in South Haven before I moved to Hernando. It was on a dead-end street. There were 5 undeveloped acres at the end of our street. Developer came in. He wanted to put, I forget the number, it was 30, 40 townhouses at the end of our little dead-end street in Colonial Hills, a little starter home subdivision. We fought it, we fought it, we fought it. Got them down to 17 single-family homes. The engineer, the land was not suitable to build on. The engineer assured everybody that it would be just hunky-dory, it would work. Well, they built those 17 single-family homes at the end of my dead-end street. the water would run down our street, run across the newly built little cove they put there. 3 houses in the middle of that cove, every time it rained, the water ran right down their driveway and into their garages. So the engineers, you know, you take them for what they're worth. Maybe they'll do a good job, maybe they won't. I apologize there. But I think it's the same, I'm almost positive it's the same engineer we're dealing with this. So, a little bad taste in my mouth. Like I said, that was 40-something years ago. You can go back and look it up if you want to. Coral Hills and Colonial Hill, it's right behind Colonial Hills Baptist Church, and I guarantee you those houses, garages are still flooding every time it rains.
Thank you. Thank you. Would someone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. My name is Mike Duckworth. My wife and I live at 1215 Milam Lane, which we are one of the two houses that are right there on Singletree, the corner of Singletree and Milam. So we're both right at the entrance. We'll be probably the primary entrance to this subdivision. And I don't want to just, I want to be brief. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I will say that my main concern is traffic. I make it a habit, as it is now. If I want to leave my subdivision, I avoid McInvale and Milam at 7 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon, especially when school's in. You just can't get out. So traffic is concerned. So I just hope that you will understand where we're coming from. I know the city wants to grow, and I appreciate that. But just take where we're coming from and our concerns in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duckworth.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Blake Prysock, 1295 Milam Lane. I also didn't plan to speak, but after hearing everybody, I figured I'd come here as well. So my concern is about the buffer on the creek, especially on lots 16 and 10. It says it's supposed to be 110 feet. I don't know if that's really there. Also, they're talking about the construction entrance. That's a driveway, and I don't know how good that's going to hold up to heavy equipment. It's also on a levee to a pond, so I'm not sure it could hold up to that. As far as clear cutting the trees, my family owns and operates a logging company. Good luck, all right? I've walked out there plenty. It's wet, it is on a slope. So don't let them threaten you with that. It's practically going to be impossible. Also, the traffic, it just doesn't make sense. If you'll look right here on Singletree, my house is the second one to the east. Those two houses right there and the house to the north there, there's 8 children that are school age right there that live right on all that traffic. All right, we walk up and down that road with our dogs, our kids, and now you're going to have 55 homes and their traffic coming through there. It doesn't make any sense. They need to have their own entrance to McInvale. All this water is going to be coming down Short Fork Creek, and you're going to have 4 box drains. My house butts right up there. I love going out there and walking in the woods. I like getting down in the creek and looking for fossils and rocks. I see trees floating down it all the time. That's going to stop that up, and that's going to make it even more of a floodplain. I would ask you guys to reject this plan and send them back to planning. This doesn't make any sense, and I don't see how it could benefit Hernando. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Does the board have any questions for any of our professionals here or for the developers?
Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Just for clarification on the construction entrance, is that going to stay open after the development, but is that going to stay open for the home construction? Or is the construction entrance only for like the dirt work and the asphalt and that sort of thing?
I'm going to ask Mr. Brady to come up and address that very quickly.
Yes, thank you. The construction access will be there in perpetuity of the construction, upon which time we have to take the barricades down because the roads will be accepted as public roads. At that time, we cannot physically barricade those roads anymore. So the answer is, the direct answer is through the major construction of the subdivision. If we could restrict that through the rest of it, we certainly would, but it's a public street at that time, and we can't restrict fire and help.
So I think the part of the question was, the way I understood it, is we know where you're going to take those barricades down when you open the public streets.
Yes, sir.
But will you also leave that construction entrance open and try to direct construction traffic through there?
Yes, we have a signed construction agreement with that property owner that I can show to the board. And it clearly just states Chris John Developers will provide an agreed-upon compensation for use of the construction access and the access proposed site of construction through the term of construction.
Okay.
If we need, it's something they're having to purchase from that developer, or from that property.
Alderwoman Lynch, does that answer your question?
They're going to go right there.
Yes,
That's
thank
fine.
you.
What other questions do y'all have?
So the retention ponds, are those temporary sediment basins or what? I know there's a lot of different terms you can potentially use for it.
They're permanent. So there's a lot that'll happen between now and then, or that we will have to create those detention ponds through engineering review, and some of those will be sediment basins that are later converted to full-time detention basins. And the long-term maintenance of those basins, too, if that's a question following, is we've got language in our HOA that will assist in maintaining all of that as required because it's in our common open spaces.
So they're dug prior to the construction.
Well, there's ways that can happen, and Joe Frank can speak to it, or perhaps any of the other engineers. You can build a series of check dams temporarily to hold silt and then move and convert or relocate those as you progress through development. We haven't engineered it yet, so it's hard to say whether there'll be a series of check dams or just a series of ponds that will be in place, constructed, and then converted upon completion. All that's monitored by MDEQ for erosion control, everything. Is that, for Mr. Frank, is that accurate enough? I don't want to mislead anything, but we've got engineering.
We allow wet or dry detention.
I think that's potentially the concern. I know a lot of people have concerns about once construction is completed, but the during construction, I think, is an element that we haven't really discussed a lot. Because, for example, when Phase 5 of Forest Meadows, which I know this is not,
Right.
it's somewhat relevant. When Phase 5 of Forest Meadows was constructed, the amount of silt that clogged the culverts and caused like some flooding issues there and some erosion in the creek between Forest
Yes.
Meadows and Notting Hill occurred. So, I'm sure there was a stormwater plan for that one. I would assume we would have had one. But, there were still issues there. So that's why I had the questions around like how exactly this is going to work. And when Compel Church was built, there's issues with the temporary sediment basin, and Danny James's pond went from blue to brown, and he called me, and we addressed it as quick as we could to try to address some of those things. So I think that's where some of the concerns are, is that the silt that lands in that stream potentially would increase the water levels, which would cause an increase in erosion.
And it's not something we take lightly. Obviously, it's an engineering consideration, and it's something that has to be thought through. And again, as Joe Frank mentioned, there are multiple layers that have to be reviewed. And I would also add that since Forest Meadows was constructed, there have been numerous changes to the policies associated with those. And being a water of the state, as Ms. Pino, I believe, mentioned, Ms. Priscilla mentioned, that's something they're going to look at closely. So, I mean, this is a blue line stream. This isn't a conventional stream somewhere, so it's going to have a lot of eyes on it. And we know that, which is why we have a significant buffer along that creek, which exceeds the buffer requirements of the city's ordinance. And again, I will touch on the pre and post, just so y'all, it was clear, when you have an existing piece of property, there are discharge points along that creek. And when you develop something, you monitor those pre-development discharge points, and you calculate how much flows going into those points. Post-construction cannot exceed that number. So for simple numbers, if whatever molecule of water is going into that stream today, 1 molecule of water is all that can go into that stream post-construction, if that's clear. We cannot compound water into that stream. I think there's like 14 or 15 developments along Short Fork Creek in the city of Hernando alone currently.
On the tree preservation area, there's, obviously some lots that are numbered here, 53, 54, 55, 37, and 38. So is it generally the thought there that there would be 5 subdivided lots that would potentially be built upon, or is that?
Get a bit closer to the
Yes.
map here. So the color that you see on this plan is a conventional establishment of a lot, monolithic slab, on-grade construction home. You'll see that lots, say 30, 29, 30, 31, extend beyond that. 34, 35, 36 extend beyond that, and then certain lots have no clearing as a product of this subdivision. So let's say lot 36, this lot right here, it is a buildable area is here, and then there's a dashed line that delineates where the tree preservation area starts. So once that demarcation delineation, once they cross that, they are severely restricted in what can happen. And in addition, as I mentioned earlier, there's a 100-foot non-disturbed buffer on there as well now. Not since the Planning Commission, that didn't exist, we added that. So that 100-foot buffer is non-disturbed. But where that house goes on each one of those lots, one home and an accessory accessory structure, pool, whatever could happen with those estate houses will be cited on each individual lots. The PD specifically restricts any further subdivision of those lots. Those lots can never be re-subdivided by condition in the plan development. That is one of the use restrictions in the PD. So what you have here, I don't know, I'm trying to think of subdivision. In Memphis, there's a Davies plantation that are large lots. I mean, some of these are 5-acre plus lots that have one home on them, 2-acre lots with one home on them. And I want to point out, along Heritage Oaks, Thousand Oaks, whatever we call it, there are 8 homes that join our boundary. Our subdivision proposed, the C plan development has 9. Along Milam, there are 3 lots that adjoin our property. We have 3 lots that adjoin those lots. So we are not, all that was taken in context when the subdivision was platted out. So to make it as compatible with the additional neighbors, these lots are larger than these. You can see homes develop. This hill extends down through Thousand Oaks. So the very thing we're talking about doing, they did in this area. That there are homes built on lots that some are larger, some are smaller than what we're proposing. So I'm sorry I got out of line, but I wanted to explain how that is. So you've got a 6.5 acres of common open space and an additional 18.5. Almost half of this property is designated as either tree preservation or common open. Almost 50% of the site is left out. So the question that came up earlier about density specifically is 15 square foot lots equate to 3 of those and the math there. That's not it. Density is a distribution of lots among the gross acreage, which is this case 55 lots along 49.06 acres, which is 1.12 houses per acre. So I wanted to make sure that was clear and point out how this is consistent with what we're trying to do in these areas. This area comes in, develops to a 25-foot or 20-foot buffer. There's not a house here. This is the area that Commissioner Thorne requested that we study providing additional access through, but that individual landowner declined our request to sell the property. So I'm getting outside of those questions specifically, Ben, but I've got a lot of other items that we can talk about if you, I want to make sure I'm addressing your questions directly first.
Well, and since I know that too, we've seen this before with other phases of neighborhoods or anything else where there is like a dedicated construction entrance that's like a gravel road that's off of a highway or something like that. But there's still subcontractors or contractors that don't get the memo or whatever it is, and they still use neighborhood streets to get to a later phase or whatever it might be. So, in my mind, it would make sense to bond out the neighborhood streets that could potentially be used to be repaired in case there are any contractors that use those streets. I know that y'all may do a phenomenal job, and it may not ever become an issue, but I know that we've seen that in the city with a current neighborhood that's being developed, that there's signs that say no construction entrance, and people blow right past them.
We have that in every development whether they're $10 million homes or, you know, starter home subdivisions and developments that once it's a public street, we have to dedicate and open the streets to sell the lots. It's keeping the painters and everybody out of there. So to the point that this board, you know, has any concerns about off-site improvements, that's something that's obviously on the table. It's the will of this committee. So, you know, I want to point out, though, that we're not doing anything. There's been some statements made, but your subdivision regulations guide us, and there are two specific provisions that say, I mean, number 12 in Article 5 of your subdivision, to assure continuous circulation system in an area when all the land is developed, the Planning Commission may require extension of a street within a subdivision to the adjoining property. That's what happened when Milam Country and Forest Meadows were established. Which street would be continued at the time the adjoining property would be developed? In this case, Crestview Point. So the subdivision regs state that. Then it says the arrangement in all new subdivisions shall make provisions for the continuation of the principal existing streets in the adjoining areas or their proper projection and for any streets or roads shown on the future land use plan. So the subdivision regulations are telling us to connect at Keeneland and Single Tree Drive. The balance of the Danny James property is future phase. This is a subdivision of that property. It may continue on. Right now, we have zero control over that. So what we're doing is abiding 100% by this city's subdivision regulation policy for continuation. That's a very important point that I think has been overlooked a little bit by some of the residents. This is the guidelines that regulate us. So forgive me, I got off on a tangent there too, but I wanted to make sure when we're talking about streets, there's nothing we have done here that is not either in direct response to the neighbors or the city's ordinance and regs.
Any other questions from the board? Any other questions from the board? Is there a motion on the item?
Thank you.
Is there a motion on the item?
I'd like to make a motion.
Alderman Miller's going to proffer a motion.
Motion to approve of a rezone request by Corey Bradley, representing the owner of the property for 49 acres from agriculture to PDU. The subject property identified as partial 800-00202 and is located on the west side of Keelam Drive, south of Milam Lane in Section 8, Township 3, Range 8, based upon the following condition, 1, 2, 3.
Alderman Miller has a motion on the table. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. We'll have a roll call vote.
Alderman Robinson?
Aye.
Alderman Wicker?
No.
Alderwoman Ross?
Aye.
Alderman Piper?
Nay.
Alderman Harris?
Aye.
Alderwoman Lynch?
Nay.
Alderman Miller?
Aye.
And that motion passes. Thank you. Y'all want to, if anyone wants to leave before we start on the next item, feel free to.
Can we take like a 2-minute break?
Yeah, we'll take a 2-minute break for everybody to On with item 17, PL 1380. Austin, if you would start us off on that.
Yes, sir. This is PL 1380, and the request is for an amendment to the Madison Lakes PUD at the southeast corner of Green Tea Road and McInville Road. Mr. Bob Dahlhoff and Michelle Years here tonight represent the application for DT Design Studio on behalf of the landowner. I appreciate y'all working with me on the staff report, as long and complicated as it was, but I tried to make it as clear as possible with the sticky tabs here. But to give you a brief outline of how we got to this point tonight, originally the property was used as a gravel mine prior to annexation of the city under DeSoto County's land use regulations. In 2003, there was a rezoning proposal to go from A to PUD, finally approved by the Board of Aldermen on March 18th, 2003. And what this included was 933 single-family homes, 407 of which, 407 acres of the total property was zoned residential to include common open space, and 65 acres of commercial. In 2004, the school, Hernando Elementary School, was proposed to locate on the site, and so the plan needed to be amended. And what that did was keep all the bulk regulations and everything basically the same, but reduce the number of lots from 933 to 719 to account for that 24 acres of where the school is being located. In 2019, the proposal came back in front of the Planning Commission, originally included 1,257 lots, and primarily focused on a change of 27 acres of townhomes. So back and forth to the Planning Commission and Board, it was scaled back to 1,061 homes, and elimination of the townhomes and an increase of the commercial area along McInville Road. It got to the board meeting, and the condition placed upon that staff report requiring the developer to provide for a water system on the lot was met with some opposition, and it was ultimately tabled because a resolution could not be reached. Since then and now, ARPA funds have become available, and the city's requested land donation of 1 acre on this site for a location of an elevated water tank, generally in the location of Byhalia and Tullahoma Road, which has necessitated a land use change for the dedication of that lot from the residential lots it was originally shown to be. And so that's why we're here tonight, is the reintroduction of the plan to the board from that iteration from 2019 to 2020 to the tabling of the water plant to now. And so in meeting with the Dahlhoff team and the owner over the past month over concerns and things that we thought had changed since 2020 and things we could brought to maybe being a better plan to the board, and Michelle will go into detail of all of this in just a second, was a further reduction in the number of homes from 1,061 to 935. The swap being the primary frontage of McInville originally was proposed as rear-faced or front-loaded lots internally accessed with a road, but you would have seen fences and a buffer yard. And so in talking with the mayor, we felt it was a good recommendation to maximize the frontage of McInville for commercial potential. In addition, McInville Square has been approved, which commercialized the McInville corridor, and the Gatorade Fieldhouse on Green Tea Road has been introduced, which commercialized the Green Tea corridor, along with the Tillman's C2 rezonings. And so the reduction in number of lots, 1,061 to 935, was generally around the commercial swap for those number of lots. I did include in your staff report all the iterations of Planning Commission to boards and then the subsequent tabling throughout 2020 and 2021 that kind of got us to this point of June 15th of 2021, where it was tabled indefinitely by the applicant because a resolution couldn't be met on the water system. In the analysis of the planning and development, the minimum home square footages have been increased. The areas, as you see in that little graphic there and in your staff report, start at 2,000 square feet and go up to 3,000 square feet in the various parts of the plan. And the most significant change from the original 2019 original application to what was ultimately approved by the Planning Commission was the elimination of all the townhomes throughout the development. There was a large number along Byhalia Road and on Green Tea Road, but those have been supplemented with single-family residential dictated by the bulk requirements in the staff report. The Land use and density comparison from the 2004 plan, I just started from the very beginning because there has been so many iterations of the plan just to show what was there originally to what's there now. So that gives you the basic changes of what's office previously, what's office now, retail, residential, and all the acreages. Most notably, on the staff comment section of this report, the requirement for a water system to be installed on the property has been removed. And so that's kind of what's generated this request tonight. At the applicant's request was, that's been removed because of the availability of ARPA funds, and it's back in front of you. I'm gonna let Michelle get into the details of what's changed since 2019 to now to give you an idea of the basic plan. But that was a 1,000-foot view of kind of how we got to this meeting tonight.
Give me those numbers again from the original plan.
So originally in 2000,
The original, what were the numbers again?
933 original was the very first plan approved. In the amendment in 2004, that included the school. It went to 719.
And then to 1,000 plus.
Yes, sir. And then 2019, the first application that went to the Planning Commission was 1,257. They vetted that back and forth, and they eliminated the townhomes to get to 1,061. And with the amendments that we've proposed along McInvale Road and Green Tea Road, it's scaled back to 935. Honestly, almost exactly in line with the original 2004 plan, just moved around. And that, until we were doing the staff report, we kind of didn't even realize it was almost the exact number, but that's just kind of where it fell.
Thanks for the clarity. I just want to make sure I had my.
Y'all have any questions for Austin before the developer speaks?
So the current state of things right now is that this development can go forward tomorrow. Like, could the dirt start being moved and construction essentially begin if nothing changes?
Yeah, that 2004 plan's still in place.
Okay.
Any other questions? Would someone like to speak on behalf of the applicant to start the process?
Hey everyone, Michelle Yee with DT Design Studio, 6465 North Quail Hollow Road, Memphis, Tennessee. And I brought a green pointer too. Thank you all for your time, and I'm gonna try to make this as short as I can. So as Austin mentioned, the approved plans for this site go way back to the early 2000s. A lot has changed in Hernando since then, all of which are really exciting for the city and will continue to increase the quality of life for your residents and attract more businesses to locate here. I just kind of put on a page what those different iterations looked like. For example, some of the changes that have occurred, the realignment of McInvale Road and the 269 interchange, the new high school, the Gatorade Fieldhouse, McInvale Square, the Delta Landing development, and Ironwood PD. So a lot of really exciting things happening in this area. And we have been working with the city on this particular generation of the PD amendment since 2019 and have made a lot of changes to the plan to make that more compatible with the city's vision for this area. We were approved by the Planning Commission in September of 2020. That's the middle plan there. And as Austin mentioned, the project has since been tabled while the water tank discussion has been going on. And now, since this critical piece of infrastructure has been located on the plan, we're really happy to finally be able to bring this forward, wrap up this segment of the planning process. And before we submitted, we did take the time to meet with the mayor, Austin, and adjacent property owner, Judge Reedy, to make sure that the plan that was submitted in 2019 and can work through that process is still in alignment with their needs. And a few requests, as Austin mentioned, came out of those meetings, which we have been able to accommodate, in addition to the change for the water tower specifically. Now, before we start to answer your questions, I just want to walk through those specific changes so you understand what that entails. These are just a summary of the plan changes and where they are located on the concept. So the first area is in the northeast corner. As we were working with this area around the new water tank site, there were some suggestions brought up that would improve the vehicular circulation around this really tricky intersection, Wichita-Homa and Byhalia. So we modified the road layout to move that residential street entrance a little bit further north to get further away from where the circulation is a little bit tricky. And in the same vein of reorganizing this area 12, we also kind of consolidated that area 17 into area 12 because the water tower was going to break up that continuity of the lots around the lake. So we consolidated all that into area 12, which essentially made the lots in area 17 larger. Another request that we had heard was the city wanted more commercial along these major road frontages and where other surrounding commercial developments were starting to happen. So on Green Tea Road, where we had single family areas 19 and 20, we've made that into all one area 19 that is going to be retail and office. And then along Mackinvale Road, the residential area 5, which is kind of the biggest swath of residential on the, southeast side of Mackinvale Road, we pulled that area back to allow commercial frontage along Mackinvale Road, actually on both sides of the road, areas 5 and 6. We created that commercial frontage and limited the residential lots to the back. And in area 6, let me try to point this out, if it'll work. Nope. Area 6, on the back side of that commercial frontage, we created an office area. So with the thought that it would be a less intense use transitioning into the school and the surrounding neighborhood, but still providing that commercial usage as was requested. And then in area 4, which was previously all retail, we took the back side of that, which was going to be less commercially viable, because we had some concerns over, if we are adding all of this commercial frontage, is that back area really going to still work for commercial? And we converted that back into a residential to match area 5, and that created a really nice gateway transition between all of the commercial on Mackinvale and then entering into more of the residential neighborhood context. So this really kind of summarizes all of the changes that we made. And again, these changes were not necessarily driven by the developer, but in conversations and in preparation to bring this plan forward to you tonight, there were some requests and considerations made that we were happy to be able to accommodate, and really we think make for a much more context-sensitive plan. And with that, I think Austin covered a lot of the stats on the development, but I'm happy to answer any other questions. We also have Judge Reedy, who can say a few words for the development as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions before she sits down?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
About Section 18 and 18A. I can't really tell from my copy. If I remember, and it's been a long time, there was going to be a road. We were concerned about the number of driveways along that area. And maybe there was going to be a road. There was some sort of consideration given for that. Is that still in place?
Yes, I'm going to let her explain that to you, but we are very limited on the number of drives in.
Yes, that's correct. That was a concern that was brought up at the Planning Commission, which we've addressed by adding a frontage road to Area 18.
That's what it was.
Yes. So that limits the access points onto the main streets to 3 access points.
So 3 access points.
Okay, and that's still there. Okay,
Yes.
I can't really see it on my map. but-
Yeah, it's hard to see at this scale.
Any
Okay,
oth-
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Reedy?
George Reedy, 175 East Commerce, also here for Madison Lakes. I think most of you already know it. I mean, the owner has worked, I believe, personally and professionally, just extremely well with the community. A lot of improvements have been made since the last plan. I will point out to you, and y'all all know this because y'all have got plenty of experience, that this is not like the previous one. This is an existing zoning PUD out there, right? So we're talking about something that could be going on, like Alderman Piper asked a minute ago, that could be going on out there tomorrow, and they could start working on the plan that was actually originally approved by the county. How Hernando, I'm proud to say, is developed, that would be kind of a disaster for the community because it's clear to me, and I've expressed many times before this board and in private conversations and everywhere, that it's my strong belief that the McInville Green Tea 269 to Getwell corridor, that is the future of the financial center and commercial center of this entire county, not just Hernando. And we, as this board has been doing, is looking and trying to see into the future to develop all that area. And I believe that Madison Moore's presentation here tonight greatly enhances and drives the city and helps the city drive towards that, achieving that goal in that area, where it provides all the commercial along McInville and substantially increases it on Green Tea, and then transitions to a residential area on the east end up there. The other changes that were made that have been important to the neighborhoods around are that the square footage on everything that's facing to the south, which is me and Oakdale Estates, has been substantially raised. It's 3,000 square feet over 18A there that's facing Oakdale Estates, where Dr. Baxter's house is, that everybody familiar with that corner, they're the ones that could actually see those houses. And then it's 2,800 square feet around all of me, which actually would be above the square footage in requirements in Oakdale Estates, but just about where the houses that have been built in there actually have been built, right? They're 3,000 square feet and up in there in the most recent construction. So Madison Moore's worked hard to try to blend into the neighborhoods, even on the west side, that right, get my directions right, west side over there. Those square footages can blend in with the houses that are on the other side of McInville between the golf course and McInville itself. So it's just a perfect blending of the neighborhood while providing the city with the commercial and the potential sales tax revenue that we desperately need for all the city's consideration and your taxpayers' considerations going into the future. I'm just strongly in favor of this plan, and I think y'all would know that if I would get up here and represent Madison Moore, because I will remind the guys that there's a few gray hairs that have been around since this started, right? I'll just say, like Alderman Miller. So I was part of the crowd that generated.
I have now.
You still got it at least, Alderman, so that's good. But I was part of the crowd that generated 500 people around, against the original plan with all the townhouses. And, there's not many developers that make such substantial changes to their plans in order to satisfy, work with the surrounding community, and make an important contribution to the city that they're trying to come in. So I would urge strongly a passage of this as a benefit to the city and to the neighborhood. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Any questions for Mr. Reedy? All righty.
I can't help but throw in this little personal thing about the previous one. Sorry, y'all give me a second. At Keeneland Drive, the county planning department thought that Dan Brown, when he submitted that, had been drinking that night, and they changed it to Keeneland, the race course. That's actually supposed to be named after my daughter, Keelan, which y'all all know. So don't anybody do that in the planning department, please, Austin, okay? Thank you.
Interesting tidbit. Is there anyone else here that wanted to speak?
Back again. John Stevenson, 1589 Johnston Road. Well, I happen to own the 123 acres directly to the east of this in the Hernando Golf and Racquet Club. I'd urge y'all to please approve this. It's going to increase my property values, which, you know, that's the greedy part of me. But the second part of this, I think it will dramatically increase the tax revenue to the city of Hernando, both through sales taxes and property taxes. I'm very happy to see that the residences along Mackinville have been removed and are now retail. I have to agree with Judge Reedy that this is going to be the future commercial heart of Hernando. I'm not sure about the county. I hope he's right about that, but I know for a fact for Hernando, because this is the only place that has the road infrastructure that can handle the traffic that we need to do this. We all know what's happening on Commerce Street. So, and this frankly is testament to the long-term planning of the city and county government and having Mackinville Road widened and extended in this way. So let's push this sucker on through and get the tax revenue base that we know we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that wanted to speak or comment? Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Bob Dalhoff, founding principal of DT Design. I just wanted to say that I guess maybe kind of reiterate what Judge Reedy had said. When we went to the Planning Commission with an amended plan after the road was put in and all, which the developer did help with, also financially and with the land himself, there were about 250 people here at that first Planning Commission meeting we had. And it was a surprise. Part were in here and part were in the parking lot. But I will have to say this. We had 3 Planning Commission meetings. At the third Planning Commission meeting that we had resolved all their issues, and actually, Mr. Reedy came and spoke in favor of it. We had no opposition at the Planning Commission meeting. So I commend him and the developer for working with the residents and try to resolve all those issues that they had. And again, we'd like to just get this thing approved and move on. Water tank is very important to the whole area. There's a lot happening up and down Mackinville Road. I'm involved in the 1,400 acres north of here, trying to make it what the city wants it to be, working closely with them. So water tank is crucial to Hernando, not just here, but in a bigger area than just this development. So thank you for everything you've done. Thanks for staying late tonight like you have, and appreciate your positive consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dalhoff.
Mayor, the water tank that's been mentioned, is that the one that was bid out, that the bid was accepted at the last meeting for 1.03 million?
No, we have not bid that out. We bid out the water plant, which will be down on the Valhalla property.
Okay, all right. So I know it's hard to project this out, Joe. What do you think the timeline would be for this water tank becoming like a reality?
About a year.
Okay.
We've got to have it under contract in August.
Right. To have the ARPA funds applied to it, right? End of next year.
Any other questions from anyone? Mr. Reed.
Can I say something about that? So, just to be clear, that the Madison Moore family has donated that as part of this, right, for the consideration after this passes, that would be donated, and there will be, and we've already talked about it with Austin, there will be issued some conditions in the deed, of the donation deed, to make sure it's
properly screened.
Properly screened with 2 levels of screening and proper fencing, so it'll blend in with the neighborhood. And Austin's already got really good ideas about making that work and everything. So.
Okay.
Any other questions?
The jury's trying to get pre-approval or some pre-approval. You haven't been?
I heard it.
Is there a motion from this board?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve an amendment to the Madison Lakes PUD by Bob Dahlhoff with DT Design Studio representing the owner of the property, including making sure to include the building standards and visual representations from the presentation this evening. The subject property is identified as parcel 307-305-000-0000100 and is located southeast corner of Green Tea Road and McInville Road based on upon the following findings, 1 through 3.
Second. There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion passes. Thank y'all very much. Item 18, PL 1808.
All right. This is a request for final plat approval for the Perry Commercial Subdivision, one lot on 1.13 acres. On the west side of Highway 51, north of Oak Grove Road in Section 13, Township 3, Range 8. Andy Richardson is tonight representing that application. This proposal will create one commercially zoned lot on 1.13 acres. It has direct access to Highway 51 and also has access to centralized water and sewer. As I mentioned, it's Zone C2. There is a grading permit issued on the lot now, so it's under construction. The setbacks are listed in your staff report for a front of 20. There's no side setback in C2 zoning and a rear of 20. All the bulk requirements meet or exceed that C2 district. The applicants requested that all required improvements be tied to the building permit, which is currently ongoing on the site. And the final approval for the curb cut access will be approved through MDOT. So we will pend any decision of that building permit to that MDOT access permit. This was heard by the Planning Commission at our last meeting and recommended for approval. And in the proposed motion, items 1 through 9 are just standard approval or denial criteria. There's one edit. I did notice a typo on item 3. It's not Creekside, it's Highway 51. And so just to note on item 3, it's Highway 51 rather than Creekside. Other than that, one lot on 1.3 acres and a request is for final plat. And I'm available if you have any questions.
But, what impact would this have on that ditch? Because I see them doing all that dirty work, and I ain't seen up no slip, I ain't seen nothing up, and it's gonna rain this week, according to the weatherman. And so I want to ensure that we get that up, because like I said, all that dirt is loose now, and that's already a problem because we're having, so Frank, we got issues already on the south side of West Oak Grove. And so when we put all that mud in there this week, we're really gonna have erosion again on the south side of Oak Grove.
Yes, sir. I actually texted Andy today about getting with the contractor and getting it installed.
Oh, I see him back there hiding, I'm sorry.
But yes, sir, that's noted. We'll get it.
Any other questions?
Oh, okay.
If there are no questions, is there a motion?
Got a
Is there
motion?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, come, you
Go
got a
ahead,
question?
Alderman.
Are there sidewalks on that side of 51 currently?
There's not, but there will be.
Yeah.
As a part of this development. So the streetscape, if you come south on where the renovation was of the auto repair facility to the north of this building, there's a stub sidewalk.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
They're going to tie to that and then come back down with the curb work that MDOT's doing to tie to the MDOT sidewalk on the property to the south.
Okay, I see it now. All right, thank you.
In a fast-growing city, those sidewalks to nowhere attach very quickly.
And that sure gonna be needed with y'all roundabout.
Is that our thing?
Praise the Lord.
I don't have it. That's why, wait a minute.
Oh, good, thank you.
Yeah, I did. Right.
That's great information.
So, it's just one cut there, right?
Sir?
51. One cut.
A one curb cut, yes, sir.
I just wanna make sure.
That's an
I got a
open lot
motion
right
now.
there, too.
If you'll offer your motion.
Motion to grant final Come on, right here. Motion to grant final plat approved to Perry Commercial Subdivision, one lot, 1.13 total acre located on the west side of Highway 51, north of Oak Grove Road in section 13, Township 3, Range 8, based on the finding of the submitted plat generally conform to the requirement of the city code and ordinance subject to the following condition 1 through 9.
Second. There is a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. Item 19, PL 1815.
Yes, sir. This is PL 1815. The request is for a final plat approval for Magnolia Sportsplex subdivision for one lot on 3.33 acres on the north side of Holly Springs Road, east of McInvale. Andy Richardson's representing this application as well. This lot, as I mentioned, is one lot on 3.3 acres with direct access to Holly Springs Road and does have access to centralized water and sewer. This property is zoned PUD and was recently the subject of an approval to account for an indoor soccer facility on the site. And so this plat you see before you does match what that preliminary site plan included on the north side of Holly Springs. This was heard by the Planning Commission and recommended for approval. And the road improvements, I know that was talked about during the PUD, will be required for their lane and a half curb and gutter and sidewalk to extend to the frontage of their entire property. So if you see what's across the street for that lane and a half and curb and gutter, it would basically match to provide for a wider cross-section for that frontage.
So they won't be pulling a bond, we'll just won't issue an occupancy permit until that work's done, correct?
If approved by the board, they've requested to tie it to the building permit. Yes, sir.
That seems a lot easier.
Did you ever ask them about the brick color? If they could tone it down and it not be white with black accents that do not match or conform to the area?
I did ask, and they asked, they were saying that it's going to match the school, and they were just requesting it stay the same.
The school, like the new high school that's many miles away?
Yes, ma'am.
Interesting.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to grant final plat approval to Magnolia Sportsplex Commercial Subdivision, one lot, 3.33 total acres. The subject property is located on the north side of Holly Springs Road, east of McInvale Road in section 17, Township 3, Range 7, upon the finding that the submitted plat generally conforms to the requirements of the city's codes and ordinances, subject to the following conditions, 1 through 9.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
No.
All opposed, no. The motion passes. We had one nay vote. Okay, that motion passes. Item 20, the request to amend Chapter 16 Environment Article 4 Nuisance and Abatements Ordinance concerning dumpster doors on commercially zoned property.
Yes, sir. Last one. Y'all are done with me. So after talking with the mayor, we had noticed that there are several dumpsters in the city that the doors are being left open and trash is accumulating around and in and around the site. And then Alderwoman Ross, the same day, reached out for a complaint in her district of a dumpster that was stayed open. And so in review of our ordinances in the nuisance and abatement ordinance, we didn't have any specific language that the doors of a commercial dumpster were supposed to stay closed. We got an ordinance that you have to have doors, but keeping them closed and free of trash was not technically in here. And so what we did is we revised that nuisance ordinance to include specific language that says if you have a dumpster enclosure on the site with doors, you got to keep them closed. And other than times, obviously, of service and delivery, if you're putting trash in it or a truck. And all the trash within that enclosure must be in the trash can. It can't be just strewn about the site. And to give you some ideas, I just included some pictures of the site around town that kind of generated these complaints from some of the citizens, and to give you an idea of what we're trying to get taken care of with these doors. And so the request is to amend the nuisance and abatement ordinance to add the highlighted language in your staff report to give us those teeth to enforce.
The situation that I've encountered in Ward 5, which was behind the building with, where, behind Mississippi Eats, that whole building back there. A lot of the cars drive behind the building. The dumpster doors were open, and 2 cars were passing, and one of them hit the door. One of the vehicles hit the door that was wide open. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these are unsightly, and they should be closed, but it was from a safety standpoint, because cars are driving back there, dropping their kids off. There's like a dance studio, and this was for the Taekwondo, and he hit it in his truck, and so he did some damage. So that was his concern, and I said that he, you know, I gave him the owner's name of the building, and, you know, if he had any issues there, that was between he and the owner of the building.
And I think that, you know, the overarching issue is, back in the day when we got design standards and said there's gonna be dumpster enclosures, it was because we thought dumpsters were unsightly. That was the whole purpose. And then if
Right.
the doors are still open, then you still have unsightly dumpsters. So it
Right.
really wasn't working without this change.
Yeah. I mean, there's several areas that are not kept very, I mean, garbage is garbage, but, you know, you don't want it all over the ground, all around it.
And we get a lot
Everybody's
of
seeing it.
complaints about that stuff, and Austin didn't really have a way to enforce it. So.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Alderman Miller, I think you were gonna say something.
Yeah, the question is that where you have, and you got an example of that, where you have multiple dumpster, but only one blocked in area, if I want to. So how do we deal with that?
There are going to be legal nonconformings that are out there, and I know probably the one you're talking about, because I've noticed them too. And it's going to be, for this ordinance particularly, it's just if you have doors and there's trash around it, you got to close the doors. If you have if you don't have an enclosure, then I'm not going to make you build an enclosure just because of this ordinance, but.
And then plus, it's kind of where it's said that all trash must be located inside the dumpster. So if you got so much trash, where you gonna leave the trash in the building? I mean, it's common, I mean, I don't understand the concept. So what do you do with the trash? What do you do with your trash when you take it out at home?
The
And your
overflow
dumpster
is what
full.
you're talking about, the overflow?
And your dumpster full, what do you do with your trash?
Set it next to it.
That's my point.
That is gonna be an issue that he'll have to work on with enforcement and using common sense. But I do think that a lot of these, they need to have 3 times a week.
I'm talking about whereas that, and we can go to the county, for instance, as far as they're concerned, on any given day
Noticed theirs were open today, too. Yeah.
that is sitting on the ground.
But if you look at some of these pictures, some of that trash looks like it's been sitting there for quite a while and not just on a weekly basis.
I'm still saying the same thing, but that's a housekeeping thing on the other part, but you still got fresh. Well, if time is gone, the Chad and looked at the watch, you gotta go to bed. Anyway, so I'm gonna fall asleep.
My kid's been asleep.
I'm usually asleep by this
I do
time,
think
man.
that our staff will
No, I'm
use some
not.
discernment.
That's what I'm saying, just use a little CS, man, that's all I was saying.
All right, is there a motion to approve that one?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Can I have a motion on the utility adjustment?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no.
Motion to adjourn.
Chad.
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. We are now adjourned.